I went birding yesterday with our guest tonight. Guess where? Um, you can probably someplace between the Blue Stem Loop Trail and the Lake Mary Boardwalk. I asked our speaker how he'd like me to introduce him. Without missing a beat, he replied, "Oh, just say some guy who will talk about birds." Yeah, some guy, that Ted Floyd. I won't recite his long resume. You already know he's a fellow Coloradan who lives in Lafayette, where he edits Birding Magazine, the flagship publication of the American Birding Association. And a birder? Well, I read somewhere that he's filed at least one and probably several eBird checklists every day ever since eBird happened, or maybe more. Um, let's ask him how many times during the Q&A, okay? Ted also writes books about birds, including one of the best and most comprehensive out there, the National Geographic Field Guide to the Birds of the United States and Canada, whose 8th edition just came out this past fall. And yes, Ted talks about birds. Um, I don't mean Ted talks. I mean Ted can talk. Try and stop him. Across more than 2 decades, he has spoken to DFO audiences many times, and every one has been memorable. That's because whatever Ted Floyd's talking about, he's interested in, enthusiastic, deeply interested. I mean, it bubbles right up in tonight's title, The Wonders and Glories of Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, the greatest place on earth. So please welcome some guy to talk about birds, our friend, Ted Floyd.
Thank you very much, Pat. Let me ask a urgent question right off the bat here. Can you hear me, Pat? Am I audible? Very
Yes.
good. Then that means we're at least 50% of the way there. So in a moment here, I'm going to be cranking up a PowerPoint presentation, and the screen will actually be black. I think you'll just see me for a little while. As Pat said, I'm going to be talking to you all for just a little while here. But let's do this complicated, potentially complicated transition here. And if all goes according to script, oops, I'm already off script. I will soon be sharing my screen. I think I have just done, oops, I'm just about to do that. And let me do this and we're almost here. If I am correct, Pat, and if you get a thumbs up on this, you just see a black screen and you see me and nothing else. Is that correct? All righty. Well, sorry for the technical preparations there now, but here we are. Thank you, Pat. I really appreciate the kind introduction. Good evening to all of you all. I've said this before, it bears repeating. I'll say it again. I am so grateful to be here with WFO. Pat, I didn't realize it had been 20 years or 20 plus years, but I suppose that is the case. I loved DFO from the moment I first arrived here. I remember hanging out with the late Bob Spencer, the elder, and Chris Wood, who's now fairly well, he's becoming elderly himself, and Patty Eckelmeyer and others. And here we are now, really with a marvelous new generation of DFO enthusiasts. The organization is as wonderful as it ever has been. For those of you all who are perhaps not yet plugged into DFO, I heartily encourage you to learn more, to join. The membership is extremely reasonable, and DFO does really, really wonderful work in the community as well. So just wanted to say thanks to all of you. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Linda. And thank you all for being out here this evening to hear me go off on the wonders and glories of Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. But before we do that, and before I show you any images here, I'm going to begin with a digression. I'm sort of good at digressions, and it's going to seem to have nothing whatsoever to do with Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, but it's sort of the warm-up show, the warm-up band. I'm going to tell a story from my childhood, from long, long ago and far, far away, and I think that it is relevant. In fact, I know that it's relevant to understanding my present devotion to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, and sort of the way I've been pre-adapted, I think, for being sort of an arsenal evangelist. So this story that I'm about to share with you all here, before we get into Colorado and Denver and the Arsenal, is from the year 1983, when I was in the 9th grade. And I remember picking up an issue of Audubon magazine then that had a special feature on the National Wildlife Refuge System. And I was just mesmerized by the content about the famous refuges, Bombay Hook and Brigantine and Bosque del Apache. But the part of the article, it's really more than an article, it's a feature with multiple articles. But the sort of mini article that most amazed me was on what we called Tinicum National Wildlife Refuge at the time. It's now Heinz National Wildlife Refuge in Philadelphia. And what so amazed me really was that Tinicum is in a city, a huge city, one of the biggest cities in the hemisphere. It's in Philadelphia. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around a national wildlife refuge being in a city. The idea of an urban national wildlife refuge just made no sense to me. Well, as a ninth grader, I did what ninth graders often do. I just determined to see this for myself. So I took a Greyhound bus, 300 miles to Philadelphia, and then took the train out to Swarthmore, where my grandmother lived, and went to bed and woke up early the next morning and birded around the Swarthmore campus in Crum Creek. And then I walked to Tinicum. It's about 7 miles. And then I walked around Tinicum another 3 or 4 miles. And then I walked back to my grandmother's house and birded that evening. So if we've done the math here, we're up to at least 20 miles. And then I did the same thing the next day. And then I took the Greyhound bus back home. And those were the two most glorious days of my life to that point. I saw so many life birds. I grew up in Pittsburgh, in a big city that just does not have the freshwater tidal marshes that Philadelphia does. So birds like swamp sparrow and common moorhen or common gallinule or whatever we called it back then. And I think we even called them long-billed marsh wrens then, marsh wrens, tree swallows, great egrets. The list went on and on. Shorebirds. I saw really my first shorebirds, lesser yellowlegs and semi-palmated sandpiper and spotted sandpiper. Those were all life birds for me. And I just couldn't believe that all of this was available to city dwellers. And admittedly, I traveled 300 miles to see it by Greyhound bus, of all things. But there I was, and I just was so taken by the idea of a urban national wildlife refuge. Now, we're going to fast forward to the present time, or almost the present time here. I've sort of moved on from Tinicum. I've seen other refuges and indeed other spectacular urban wildland settings as well. But Tinicum has always been really, really special and meaningful and formative for me. The idea that you could have nature, really impressive nature and wildlife in a city where millions of people have access to it was really, really formative, as I said, for me. And I think that it sets the stage for what happened or what we're going to be talking about this evening. So moving on now to my actual first slide, I will re-welcome all of you all to my presentation on the wonders and glories of Rocky Mountain National Wildlife Refuge. If you're coming in a bit late here, I am Ted Floyd, and we are at a Denver Field Ornithologists meeting, and that is a lark bunting, which of course is the emblem of DFO and also the state bird of Colorado. All righty. Well, I've been here, as Pat alluded to, for more than 20 years. I've been here for actually close to 25 years now. And if you're sort of late to the game, if you've been birding, paying attention to co-birds, social media, et cetera, for the past 4 or 5 years, you might imagine that I've always been devoted to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. Perhaps that I, was conceived there and came out of a log or a crevice there, but that's not the case. I'm actually an Arsenal late bloomer. I did not come around to the Arsenal until embarrassingly recently. And I want to tell the story of how it is that I finally came to be so devoted to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. So I'm going to blacken the screen again here, and I'm going to subject you to one more story, and then we're going to really get underway here. So this is the story of how I first went to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. So it was recent. It was actually in 2019. I'd been living in Colorado for well over 17 years before I ever went to the Arsenal. Like some of you all probably can't fathom such a thing that I went 17 years without going to the Arsenal, but so it was. And the story of how I made my first trip to the Arsenal is, I think, sort of worth telling. So it involves my wife and I guess a favor that I did for her, but it was a favor that very much I very much owed her. She's done an awful lot of things for me as well. And so she works with the Nature Conservancy, and she's sort of a mucky muck, and she collaborates with important data scientists from all over. And when they come into town, often from abroad or somewhere far, far away from Colorado, she asks me to host them on a little private birding and wildlife and nature tour. And It's not much of an ask. I can always be importuned to take somebody bird watching. It's something that I naturally am inclined to do. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, in general, and Kay would back me up on this too. The folks whom I go out with aren't quite as fast as I am. They don't go quite as long as I do. They don't walk quite as far as I do, and perhaps they're not quite as knowledgeable about birds as I am. However, the person I'm about to mention here was all of those things and much more. So this was John Cargis. He's a TNC mucky muck down in Texas, and I knew who he was actually. He's a quite good and well-known birder. So Kay told me that I would be taking John Cargis on a tour of Colorado, pretty much at John's, whim. Wherever John wanted to go, I would take him. So given what I knew of Cargis, I thought, okay, we're going to be going down to like Lamar, getting there by sunrise, seeing southeastern specialties, and then being up to Rocky Mountain National Park by sunset, and Lord knows going out to Steamboat or something the next day. But that wasn't the case at all. He requested that I take him to Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. I thought that's like such a strange place to go. I mean, it's right in Denver. Don't you want to do anything more exciting than the Arsenal? But he was determined to see the Arsenal. He told me that he'd heard about the Arsenal, that it was just this amazing place. It was in some ways a fraught and compromised place also, but really, really significant in the annals of sort of conservation and outreach to large populations of people. And he really wanted to see the Arsenal. So I thought, okay, John, I'll take you to the Arsenal, even though I thought maybe we'd go somewhere more quote unquote exciting than the Arsenal. All right, so I got the location where he was staying in the pickup time. And I usually pick up people like this at around 9 in the morning. But when Carr just said I was going to be getting him at 5 a.m., I thought, okay, this is like a really serious guy. So I picked him up in, I guess it was a hotel. I'm not really sure where he was, but it was in the deep in the bowels of Commerce City. It was still dark. And of course, he was already waiting by the curb. I didn't have to go in or anything like that. He hops into the vehicle and says, let's go. We're going to the Arsenal. I thought, okay, we're going to go to the Arsenal. And I'm following the phone navigator and just getting deeper and deeper into the heart of Commerce City, and their factories, and there's a broken down cars, and a shopping cart was just shot right through the intersection at one point. I thought, well, what are we getting ourselves into? And it was just like going to Tinicum when I was a kid. I just, you're there in Philadelphia, like deep in the heart of West Philly. It's a city. And then all of a sudden, just this spectacular sort of wilderness vista in front of us. I could not believe it. Well, the sun had risen. We got to the entrance gate, and right away there was scenery like this. So the date's June 19th, 2019. I'm with John Cargis, and also, by the way, with Mel Silvis. I should give a shout out there as well. And I just couldn't believe that there was such beauty. It's not technically in Denver, but it's right outside Denver. It's essentially in the city of Denver. This is a beautiful American white pelican just coming in for a landing, well within earshot of major streets and boulevards, and there are planes going over at DIA. It's a very urban setting, and you have birds like this American white pelican coming in with a perfectly bucolic, sort of rustic, very placid, almost pristine sighting. I know that the refuge is not pristine, but it feels that way. We saw birds like this beautiful Swainson's hawk at a nest. And the whole time, Patrick, you said that I talk a lot. Well, John talked a lot too, and he was just so full of knowledge about everything, including the arsenal. And it's just so I really, really, I was infected by John's enthusiasm, and I started to wonder to myself, like, why haven't I gone there for the past 17 years? And let's just say I've been making up uh, lost time ever since. I have been going to the Arsenal very, very devotedly. Patrick, I checked eBird today. I have more than 100 Arsenal checklists since June 19th, 2019. All right, I'm going to now get into the actual presentation. That was the prelude there. I started at Tinicum. I finally saw the light and went to the Arsenal in June of 2019. And now we're going to really commence our whirlwind tour of the wonders and glories of Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. First, I just want to give a almost overwhelming, very, very sort of a quick tour of just the cool things that you see at the Arsenal. That'll go pretty quickly. Then I want to look at 5 special days that I've had there. And they're special not so much for rare birds or for large species lists, but just because I think they get at the essence of birding at the Arsenal. And then finally, I want to spend just a little bit of time thinking about where we are today and perhaps where we're going in the future. So those are the 3 parts of the presentation. Again, just an Arsenal sampler, and then some representative days, and then where we are right now. So let us get into this Arsenal sampler right now. And what Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge, like many, many other national wildlife refuges, is although primarily, I mean, its primary focus is the protection of wildlife. It's also um, has a very strong secondary emphasis on wildlife observation. So, like so many other refuges, there's an auto loop or a wildlife drive, they call it, and also interpretive signs, interpretive trails. It's really easy to get around in the arsenal to see lots of cool birds. And here are just a few of them. There's a rock wren. Rock wrens are resident of the arsenal. This is a bird that Archer Silverman and I saw a little bit more than actually a little bit less than a year ago. It's a fairly recent sighting. So rock wrens are resident there. They're really quite easy to see. Here's a Wilson snipe that my daughter Hannah Floyd and I saw last year. You can pretty much drive up to birds like this. They breed at the refuge. You can hear them singing and also winnowing. You'll often see uncommon birds. This is a rose-breasted grosbeak that Helen Butts and I saw also last year. It's not uncommon at all to see uncommon birds like rose-breasted grosbeak at the Arsenal. I know many people, myself included, love to go to the Arsenal for the raptors. The raptor show there is marvelous. This is a Merlin. And by the way, I'm very gratified. I see some folks from back east here. If this Merlin looks a little bit funny to you, this is the truly beautiful subspecies of the Merlin, the one that winters in Colorado. And by the way, that may be breeding in Colorado. We've had some summer records, and I suspect it's just a matter of time before this prairie Merlin is breeding in Colorado. But this beautiful sort of baby blue and brick red Merlin, a lot lighter than the birds that you all have back east and also on the West Coast as well. And another just beloved raptor of the Arsenal is the Mississippi kite. This is a bird that, as I recall, I can't remember who I saw this bird with, but oh yeah, it was with Archer and Owen and Kieran earlier this year. So a Mississippi kite. This bird is actually right off the Arsenal, but Arsenal. Sorry, kites are now seen annually. Regularly at the Arsenal during the spring and into the summer, and they nest just a little bit to the south in Denver proper. So lots and lots of cool birds, but I really need to point out that there's a lot more to the Arsenal than birds. There are reptiles, like for example, this marvelous eastern yellow-bellied racer that Kieran Schnitzmann and I saw a couple of years ago. There are wonderful lizards there. I just love these six-line race runners. This is another one that Helen and I saw just a short while ago. And I'm not much of a mammal guy, but I sure love seeing badgers. If you spend enough time at Rocky Mountain Arsenal, you will absolutely see the American badger. And just a quick human story here. I remember so well this badger. It was with Hannah and also with Andrea Toltzman and her son Simon Toltzman. And this bird stopped us in our tracks on the wildlife drive, and I never saw four people, myself included, just more heartfelt in their delight about this animal. I mean, there were like tears of joy in the car, and so you can't get out of your car on the wildlife drive, but you can. We've decided emerge from the sunroof, and I think all four of us like somehow got out of that sunroof. And talk about Santa going down the chimney. Just let me say that getting four bird watchers out of a sunroof, that was really something. But this badger just we could not stop watching it. It was just one of the most charming and delightful and delectable things we have ever seen. So they're animals like badgers. Now, as cool as vertebrates are, birds especially, we love insects, and there are so many of them at the Arsenal. This is a beautiful queen. It's sort of a monarch look-alike, much rarer than the monarch, but they do show up at the Arsenal. They're a more southern butterfly. This is one that Hannah and her friend Catalina Kerwin and I saw back during the pandemic. There are just these amazing grasshoppers. This is a rainbow grasshopper or rainbow lubber. This is one that Adriana, I take it back. This was not Adriana. This is something that we saw in an American Birding Association field trip that Leanne Pilger and Hannah and I and others were involved in. But beautiful grasshoppers, marvelous beetles. This is a locust borer. It's really quite common out there. This is the one that Adriana and I saw on a miserably cold, rainy day in early September. It was like the temperature was in the 40s, but there were so many birds and insects that day, including lots of these locust borers. A little while ago, I got a nag from my friend, the entomologist Tom Schultz, up in Fort Collins. So, Tom, if you're out there are tiger beetles out there. Are there ever tiger beetles at the Arsenal? There are so many of them. This is just a handful of some of the beetles we've seen out there. The punctured tiger beetle up in the upper left there, which is apparently no longer in the genus Cicindela. I did not know about that. The oblique-lined tiger beetle, the purple tiger beetle, which is green, go figure, the green claybank tiger beetle, and the green and brown brown tiger beetles are cool, but the incredible ones are the red ones, the red and blue ones, the beautiful big sand tiger beetle, the blowout tiger beetle. Remember in college we used to go to like blowout parties. I mean, this is the blowout tiger beetle. It doesn't get any cooler than that. The splendid tiger beetle, the festive tiger beetle. Tom, I remember your little lesson to me if you're out there about the dielectric mirror, and we've definitely got some dielectric mirror going on with these beetles. So I could talk all night about the beetles and butterflies and grasshoppers and badgers and lizards and snakes at the arsenal, but I think we're going to focus primarily for the rest of our time this evening on the birds. So I've sort of elided something so far. I've shown you a whole bunch of pictures of animals, and people love to go to the arsenal and photograph things. I'm not even a photographer, but I sure take a lot of pictures of birds and other biota when I'm out there. But the human element is unavoidable in a very happy way out at the refuge. You see so many human beings out there. Here is a guy fishing out at Lake Ladora. This is another trip that I was on with Helen Butts not too long ago. And in case you missed it, there's a yellow-headed blackbird in the foreground there. Here is a family out riding their bikes, dad and the kid, and you can see the industry and the utility structure and the homes. And you also notice there's a black tern in the image right there. So really quite a sort of a constant juxtaposition of the human and the wild at the arsenal. Here is the Denver skyline, and you probably see that there's also a western meadowlark in view there as well. So again the intersection between humans and birds, between the civilization, as it were, and wilderness is a constant theme of being at Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. I actually want to focus on the people themselves, really the actual people. I sometimes go to the Arsenal all by myself, but I usually go with other people. And we've had so many wonderful, just memorable experiences. Here's my daughter, Hannah, showing a group of birders with the American Birding Association, a Woodhouse's toad that she has found on the trail. By the way, that's a Leanne Pilger with the ABA. Some of you all must know her, in the lavender in the background there. Also for my Pittsburgh peeps, the guy with the Pirates hat. I had to get him in there for you all. So Pirates Legion, Pirates Nation, we are Legion. But that was a wonderful outing that we did with the ABA back in August a couple of years ago. Here are the leaders on that field trip. That's Christy Corello on the left. Anybody who's come through CFO in the past 10 or 15 years, or who's gone through ornithology at Metro State, absolutely knows Dr. Corello, and she helped us lead that field trip. That is Leanne next to Christy there. That's Drew Bender, who is one of Christie's students and was a field trip leader with us. And that is, again, the ubiquitous Hannah Floyd, who helped guide that trip and many other trips that we have run at the Arsenal. I want to talk about one day in particular because it was one of the most, I don't know, just intensive immersion experiences in humanity of all time. So this is a fundraiser that Isabel Bush, who's in the bright blue there, sort of over at the far left center, put together. We were out there raising money for the Western Field Ornithologists, which is a group, by the way, that I commend to all of you. They do marvelous work, both for research and education, and also outreach to young people as well. And Isabel came up with the idea of raising funds by going out and seeing not only birds, but everything. So this is our iNaturalist Dream Team. In the back there in the red shirt, that's Isaac Boardman. Next to him is Claire Weiner, and that sort of a middle row in the back there. I've already mentioned Isabel, and then next to her in the light blue shirt, that's Archer Silverman. Another recurring theme at the Arsenal is Archer. That's me in the pink shirt. Tyke James there in the black jacket and the trucker's hat. Down on the ground there, that's Christian Nunes and his sons Emmett and Cassidy, and then the .5 photographer there, zoomer par excellence, is Hannah Floyd. We had a marvelous time. We started, at least three of us did, way before dawn. It's just before sunrise here, but Isabel and Hannah and I have been out documenting the nocturnal migration of white-crowned sparrows. There's a lot of active migration at the Arsenal, and we've been listening to white-crowned sparrows flying over on a rather cold night. Here is one of our youngest members. That's Emmett Nunes, who is photo documenting a sphingia, a kind of moth, for our iNaturalist Big Day fundraiser for Western Field Ornithologists. Here are Hannah and Archer again with Isabel watching on. They are documenting a great crested grasshopper, which is just this insane, huge grasshopper with this bizarre wheel-like appendage on the back. And that's what they are taking a look at here. And we had an adventure. We had an encounter with law enforcement. Yeah, so we were the day was sort of winding down, and all of a sudden, these vehicles come in at top speed with lights flashing, and there's dust blowing up all over the place. I'm thinking, like, what is going on here? And they stop right at my vehicle. And I thought, well, okay, I guess I probably wasn't supposed to park there, but guys, can't you just give me the parking ticket without all the flashing lights and the dust and everything else that's going on there? And and then the guys hopped out of the vehicles. I mean, it was like serious police action with like, oh, I want to say the guns were drawn, but they're ready to be drawn. I'm thinking, really, what did I do wrong here? Well, it turned out that it wasn't me. It's just that I was in the way, and they had some bigger fish to fry. And that's Taiki, by the way, back there, and then Hannah flashing the peace sign. Very much boxed in by law enforcement. I want to say, by the way, that federal law enforcement in connection with the wildlife refuge. Was incredibly courteous and professional. In fact, actually, when they finally figured out that I was the driver or the owner of the car, um, they asked like what I was doing. And again, I thought I was going to be getting a parking ticket. And I explained, well, we're doing this big day, a fundraiser. And they were so nice about it. Like, we're really sorry that we messed that up. I hope you guys aren't getting off schedule. Here, let's move our vehicles and we can shift the operation down the street for us. I thought, that's like a really cool excuse. So the next time I get pulled over, the next time anybody gets pulled over, just say you're doing an iNaturalist Big Day fundraiser for a birding organization, and the cops will let you go. All right. Well, that was just a little tidbit of what October 12th, 2025 was all about. I've shown you all a lot of pictures of my daughter, Hannah. I also want to mention that Andrew Floyd, whom some of you all knew when he was younger, is very much in the picture as well. He's no longer with us, and I don't mean that he's no longer with us. I mean, he's not in this hemisphere right now. He's wound up in Korea. He's studying at Yonsei University through the honors program at the University of Utah. And here he is with his cousins Eddie and Griffin. And I've just picked them up at DIA at shortly before 4 in the morning. They're back on a red eye from Las Vegas. So yeah, three young men, red eye from Las Vegas. What could possibly go wrong? All right, so I've been in touch with Griffin a fair bit. He's actually a fair bit older than Eddie is, but I really kind of don't know Eddie at all. And I think I saw him when he was like an infant, but I was sort of aware of Eddie's existence. So I'm in the car, we're kind of getting to know each other, and he's kind of a quiet dude, but he just sort of you know, inquires as we're heading out of the airport past the Blue Horse. Hey, Uncle Teddy, can you take me to the Arsenal? I'm like, wow, I like this guy. I'm like, well, guys, it's like only like 4 in the morning. It doesn't open for a while. So I actually went back home. But apparently Eddie and Griffin, I'm not sure if Andrew was with them or not, went to the Arsenal that day. I just thought it was so cool. I mean, red eye in from not Philadelphia, red eye in from Las Vegas, and next thing you know, the guys are out there at the Arsenal. So somehow they'd heard from me that the Arsenal was a cool place, and Eddie and Griffin spent part of the day out at the Arsenal, and I thought that was cool. Alrighty, well, that concludes the first part of what I wanted to talk about. What we're going to do now is, as I said, go through several representative days of birding at the Arsenal. We're going to go through these really, really quickly here. As I said at the outset, they're not chosen for maximum species lists or maximum rarity, but just to give a flavor for what it's like being at the Arsenal. So the first day we're going to talk about is October 24th, 2020. This is during the worst part of the pandemic. Things were just getting worse and worse and worse, but we were allowed to go out to the Arsenal. We wore masks and we social distanced, and just a magnificent day with Hannah and her friend Catalina Kerwin. And this was slow birding, as they say. And that's not a bad thing. Slow birding is a good thing. We spent literally hours at a Big Havana Pond watching the shorebirds, and there were so many species there. In addition to the ever-present killdeer, and there's some Wilson snipes. There was this ghostly, beautiful American avocet. There was a late leaf sandpiper hanging on. There was a black-bellied plover. That's a pretty good bird for the Arsenal. We saw this beautiful greater yellow legs skittering along the ice. It was a cold morning, as you may recall, if you recall, October of 2024, we had a major snowstorm the next day. This beautiful lesser yellow legs was back in a part of the pond that actually had some open water. And the real showstoppers were long-billed dowitchers. Here's one imitating a giraffe or something, but a really, really nice little flock I shouldn't a nice medium to big flock of dowitchers. But Catalina and Hannah and I spent like hours just sitting there and quietly learning the shorebirds. Actually, an article in Birding Magazine came out of Hannah's studies. She wound up collaborating with Peter Pyle on molt and dowitchers, and all that came out of a pandemic study with Catalina and with me at Big Havana Pond at Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. So that's trip number one. Trip number two is a more recent one. This was October 19th of 2024, and this was like a day of rarities, and those do happen happily sometimes at Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. So um, remember, Jenna Anthony was with us, Tyke James was there, Claire Wayner, Harold Eister, and right at the beginning at that inlet canal at on the way up to Big Havana, Jenna she just moved to the area, and I don't get quite figured out that scarlet tanager is a good bird, although she certainly knew what it was. But she just points out a scarlet tanager to us, this luminous, beautiful, immature female scarlet tanager, and just kept up like that all day long, out on the right on the actual wildlife drive, like out in the prairie at First Creek Crossing. We found a northern saw-whet owl. We didn't see it, but this is the spectrogram, and those are the very, very diagnostic tooting notes there. You can sort of see it building up in an amplitude, toot, 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 and just a northern saw-whet owl singing in broad daylight. If you're curious, others did follow up and find the bird. So it was a legit northern saw-whet owl. It was there for a few days. We found a surf scoter. It's a female, obviously. It's certainly an uncommon bird in Denver in the winter. Another uncommon bird, Harris's sparrow. So the point I want to make about October 19th, 2024 is that you can see a lot of rare birds. If you want to go to the Arsenal just to see rarities, you will not be disappointed. It is a magnet for rarities. We saw those and many other birds, again, with Jenna and Harold and Tyke and Claire on that beautiful October 19th, 2024. Let's talk about another intense but sort of casually intense experience. And this is going to be the experience of May 25th, 2025. So this was again with Hannah, and it was a migration day that didn't feature any rarities, but just featured nonstop, constant birds all day long. We saw almost 100 species that day, and because Hannah was there, we were doing a lot of photography of insects and plants and reptiles and anything else that contained protoplasm. But there were so many birds. This is, I realized, just one stilt sandpiper, but there were actually about a half dozen stilt sandpipers out there. It was a fallout day for black terns. There were black terns everywhere. All of the major water bodies at the Arsenal had black terns that day. Lots and lots of ducks were hanging on. I just love female ruddy ducks. I think they're the funniest looking of all ducks, maybe of all birds in Colorado. But this dumpy little ruddy duck was just out there doing her thing. Lots of passerines too. It's a great day for brewer sparrows. This brewer sparrow, by the way, is in a sand sage, and the Arsenal has a really, really several really, really nice stands of sand sage, and the brewer sparrows do very, very well there. In fact, they've been breeding there in decent numbers for the past couple of years. So this might have been either a late migrant or more likely a breeder. And then this very, very wet and sort of sad-looking burrowing owl, wondering if the rain is ever going to go away. But I don't know why he didn't just go down into his hole, but that's a burrowing owl that we saw as well. So a day not of rarities, but of just nonstop avian wonders and many, many other non-avian wonders as well. And we went home eventually because I think we were summoned home for a late lunch or something like that. But we could have kept on going, and I'm sure that if we had wanted to, we would have topped 100 species that day. And just a day of casual birding. All right, I want to share with you all two other cool days at the Arsenal. If I had to pick a favorite time of the Arsenal, favorite time of year, well, first of all, I would say that all the seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, are marvelous. It's really an all-season, all-purpose destination. But I think my favorite time of year is the summer, and I really mean like the dead of summer, like the summer doldrums, because the refuge is just going at full tilt there. It's just humming like crazy. Everything's going on. And I have in mind a day just a little while ago, it was a year and a half ago, with Kieran Schnitzbahn. It's June 22nd, 2024. And we actually didn't have a lot of time out there. I can't remember, but I think both he and I had to get back sort of early-ish. But, the days start early on June 22nd around the solstice. And you never know when you just drive around the refuge loop and see a Western cattle egret just doing his own thing out there. The egret was cool, but the sparrows were the showstoppers. We saw and heard grasshopper sparrows everywhere. Let me clarify that. I saw a lot of grasshopper sparrows. Kieran heard a lot of grasshopper sparrows, and I heard a few grasshopper sparrows. I don't hear them as well as I used to, but at the Arsenal, there are just so many of them, and they're so close to the car that you just hear them as you go along, and you see them everywhere. We tripped the filter and then some with grasshopper sparrows that day. We also found a lot of Cassin's sparrows. Now, the Cassin sparrow perhaps doesn't look like much, but it is one of the special birds of the arsenal. This is a choice bird for my friends back east, and also if there's anybody here from, say, California. Yeah, this is a bird people pay good money to see and to hear. We'll get to that in a moment. And they're right within, you know, shouting distance of Denver. You could probably drive down 56th Street there and like hear Cassin sparrows singing. The area, especially in and around Big Blue Stem, is a marvelous place to go for Cassin sparrows. And again, it doesn't look like much, but I do need to just share with you all because I love spectrograms of bird song, the song that this bird was given. And for those of you all who read spectrograms, and I know it's a bit of an acquired taste, this is just a thing of beauty. I think that so the sparrows sing inarguably the best songs of any birds in the ABA area. And I think that the Cassin sparrow just has the most beautiful song of all. And even if you've never heard one, you can just see the rich complexity in the spectrogram and the oscillogram down below here. A song that is just so beautiful. And if you go to Big Blue Stem at first light, I shouldn't say first light, but when the refuge opens at sunrise in the middle of the summer, you will hear Cassin sparrows, and they are just such a marvelous treat. Well, we've looked at 4 special days at the Arsenal, and now I want to look at, very problematically and subjectively, my favorite day of all time at the Arsenal. Now, just watch, it'll be, one up to the next time I go out there, and I've had many favorite days, but if there's a particular favorite day that I've had at the Arsenal, I'm going to tell you about it right now. So, if I could choose like a place on the space-time continuum, that's my favorite place on Earth in the universe, space and time. Well, it's a place I'm about to tell you about. I haven't told you yet quite where it is. I need to build up the story here. Yeah, so it was the date was August 1st, 2024. So, the dead of summer. And I was woken up by about 4:15 in the morning by texts from Hannah, who was spending that whole summer on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. And I guess they'd had like a night for the ages. They'd seen some incredibly cool owls and nightjars, and I can't remember if they had a potu or not, and like night singing laughing falcons. It was just an incredible night. They had to get up really, really, really super early to go save the sea turtles. Whatever they did with the sea turtles required these incredibly early starts, but the night birds were just giving this incredible once in a lifetime show. So Hannah was just texting me like berserk at about 4:15 in the morning. And I was wide awake and I wasn't going to get back to sleep and I had some time to kill. So I thought, why not? I'll just go to the Arsenal. So I went to the Arsenal on August 1st, 2024. And I usually kind of putter around the entrance station for a while. Sorry, the entrance gate, and then I pop in on Havana Ponds. But for whatever reason, the spirit guided me all the way to the Big Blue Stem open space, which is sort of at the very, very end of the first section of the wildlife drive. And when I got there, I saw a sage thrasher, and I thought that was a pretty cool bird. And then I saw like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sage thrashers. Keep in mind, it's August. That's a bird that migrates through Colorado, to the eastern part of Colorado a bit later, or so I thought at the time. And I found more flocks of sage thrashers, and I found 35 sage thrashers there, which I could not believe. Meanwhile, lark buntings were coming in like crazy. There were well over 250 lark buntings in the area. There were Cassin sparrows galore. There were brewer sparrows galore, lark sparrows, grasshopper sparrows. I just was so taken by this spectacle of ongoing migration with these sage thrashers, some of which I now realize were breeders. I didn't understand that at the time. All of the lark buntings going through, but that's nothing compared to what was happening in the skies above. So we had easterly winds that night, well, the night leading up to the morning that I was out there. And that can be very, very good for shorebirds coming in a little bit westerly of where we usually see them in Colorado. And I heard this marvelous shrill, curlew, and looked up and saw a glorious long-billed curlew, one of several actually that were flying over straight south that morning. So there's a little bit of a passage of long-billed curlews. But even more exciting was this bird, the upland sandpiper. I heard right after the first curlew, the unmistakable, sort of far-carrying, although not very loud, quitty-quit or wit-wit-wit of an upland sandpiper. And, that's a great bird for the Arsenal. I thought, that's going to be my bird of the day. About 10 minutes later, another one went over. 10 minutes after that, another two or three went over. I was like, what is going on here? I actually wound up having 10 upland sandpipers that day, including this bird that put down. One or two of them, I think two of them did put down. So, uh, not one, not two, not three, but 10 upland sandpipers migrating over the arsenal on August 1st, 2024, along with curlews. Curlews and upland sandpipers, by the way, are closely related. They're actually both curlews. The upland sandpipers are kind of curlew. It's a rather short-billed curlew, but just amazing to encounter that uh, onward migration after sunrise of both long-billed curlews and upland sandpipers. Since I have a captive audience here, I just want to go off script a little bit here and say something about documenting rare birds like the upland sandpiper with Merlin. I know some of you all have corresponded with me at great length about the Merlin Bird ID app. I'm here to tell you that I am the world's greatest fan of Merlin, but it's a tool that needs to be well understood. So here is a output from Merlin that very day. It was August 1st. The location it's giving me is Denver. It's actually technically in Adams County, but close enough. And that's the unmistakable spectrogram, the quitty-quit flight call of the upland sandpiper. So the filter at the time for upland sandpiper in Adams County, that part of Adams County, was set at like 0. Like, or maybe it was 1, but certainly at 10 tripped the filter for sure. And I got this detection by Merlin. So that's cool. That's great, Merlin. But don't just, if you're doing eBird, don't just say Merlin. Include the spectrogram as well, so that an eBird reviewer can actually see what you're talking about. It takes literally a second to make this screen capture. That's all it takes. And you can just upload it. There's nothing fancy about it. I didn't edit this. I didn't sharpen it. I didn't embellish it anyway, but this establishes a Merlin supported upland sandpiper. So y'all, Merlin's fine. It's great to use Merlin. Go for it. I encourage the use of Merlin, but don't say Merlin in your notes. Include the actual evidence. Okay, that's the end of my soapbox. Let's move on to something else right now. This is part 3 of my presentation. The end is within sight. So I want to talk about the arsenal at the present time. As Pat said at the very, very beginning, he spent a fair chunk of yesterday with me, but it wasn't just Pat. Here, in fact, is Pat and a whole bunch of us. This is what we looked like when the temperature had risen all the way up to about 22 or 23 degrees. We're out at Big Blue Stem, remember, my favorite place on earth. And the folks in the back there from our left to right are Topi Martinez, and then that's Pat next to Topi, and then Eric Perryman, that's me in the garish yellow. Tyke James next to me, and then in the green there is Isaac Boardman. That's Lori Potter, and hi Linda. We've already heard from Linda, and we can hear from Linda again here. And in the front, that's Elena Claver and Amelie Anderson, a brilliant 7th grade field ornithologist up in Evergreen, and Isabel Bush again. So this was our group yesterday at the Arsenal, and we had a grand old time there for sure. We didn't see a lot of rarities, but we had a great time. You're probably wondering why on earth I'm showing you a rabbit Russian, if you will, winter plumage. This is, I think, rubber rabbit brush. It's because if you look closely at those little white dots here, it was loaded with these galls. So these are insects, or they contain insects, believe it or not. These are tephridids. They're one of the 2 fruit fly families, actually, and a few of them, like this one, it's in the genus Aciurina. It's Bigeloviae, I think is the species name. It's a very, very common gall on rabbit brush, and we see them throughout the winter months, and the downy woodpeckers see them too. The downy woodpeckers love to eat these. So we spent time looking at galls yesterday because, again, if it has protoplasm, we stop to document it. I got a life mammal at the Arsenal yesterday. This is a wapiti, and apparently this individual has been here for a while. I did not know about it, but this female has been hanging out with the bison in a case of what Elena called species dysphoria, and the animal seems to be doing just fine. Although I probably wishes it were back up in Estes Park or somewhere like that. So you never know. I did not expect to see a wapiti. In fact, actually, when the text came across that there was a wapiti up on the hill, I was certain. I'm sorry, group, but I was certain one of you guys got it wrong, but it was indeed a wapiti. I think some of you all say elk, but you know what I'm talking about. That large ungulate was, and it was a life bird. Oh, sorry, a life mammal at the Arsenal for me. We did, by the way, see some birds. This is just a flock of seagulls, perhaps up at Ladora, but there are lesser blackback gulls in this image. Not 1, not 2, but 3 lesser blackback black-backed gulls. So nice count for Adams County of a bird that not all that long ago would have been very, very notable in Colorado. We're certainly seeing more of them than we used to, but nice to see three lesser black-backed gulls on an otherwise fairly slow morning at the Arsenal. We saw so many horned larks. The horned lark is the 2026 American Birding Association Bird of the Year, and I confess that I really wanted to have some encounters with horned larks out there. I, I love all of our birds of the year, but the horned lark is definitely at the very, very, very top of my list. It's just a bird that, it kind of flies under the radar. I think a lot of people don't really know that they're out there. If maybe you're just sort of casually acquainted with birds, don't even know what the bird is, but they were all over the arsenal. We saw a lot of birds already singing from bison pies. They love to get up on the bison pies and sing. They're mostly on the ground now. They do a little bit of skylarking. We also came upon a wonderful flock, about 60 individuals just swirling around in mesmerizing formation out at the Big Blue Stem Prairie. And that occasioned a celebration. So here we are, drinking already at 9 in the morning, but that's it's kombucha. It's okay to drink that. Mike Falkovich, if you're out there, I just want you all to I want you to know that this is how we do it in Denver. But we've just seen a flock of the ABA's bird of the year. I don't think it was a life bird for any of us. It's a common species. It was a year bird for most of us, myself included. And we brought out the kombucha for our first for our first celebration of the day yesterday. So all of this is from yesterday. I want to wrap up now with just a couple of points of perspective. I've shown you some beautiful birds. I've shown you some beautiful mammals. You might get the impression that the arsenal is just, as I said at the outset, pristine and bucolic and just almost like, the place that time forgot. And that's not really the case because, well, here's the site, the scene from Rattlesnake Hill looking back toward Denver. Denver's never out of view when you're at the arsenal. You can always see the city. You can always hear the nearby streets. There are always planes landing out at DIA. It's very much an urban refuge, just like Tinicum, or Heinz as we call it now. And it's a refuge that is not without its problems. It's as you probably surmise from the name Arsenal, it's an old weapons arsenal, and there's some like really nasty stuff out there. Large portions of the refuge are still not accessible to humans because they were not cleaned up as a result of the cleanup in the late 20th century. So it's sort of a blighted refuge, but it is a very, very special and wonderful place, and it's accessible to so many urban dwellers. Even yesterday, a cold day, I mean, a really cold day in February, we saw people all over the place. I mean, a few of them were bird watchers, but by and large, they were just folks out at the arsenal. But go out there on a beautiful day in September or October, and it's like being in New York City or Philadelphia. There are just so many people out there. They're looking at the bison, they're looking at the prairie dogs. Everybody loves the bald eagles out there. And again, I get that the arsenal is not a totally pristine place, but it is wilderness in its way. And it's just so encouraging that this refuge, which is, by the way, the size of Manhattan Island in New York, is accessible to so many people. I hope I didn't say inaccessible. It is accessible to so many people. And it is overrun in the happiest way by human beings for so much of the year. I saw an estimate, not an estimate, but a count once. I believe it's certainly more than 1 million people visit it every year, and I may be off by maybe it's like 2 million or something like that. But this is not just a handful of visitors. This is an awful lot of people. Well, I have one more image, and I know it's customary to end presentations like this with a sunset shot, but I'm not going to do that. This is sunrise yesterday at the Arsenal. We've just gotten through the wildlife gate, and we've just stopped to take a picture of the sunrise. And to me, this is just the emblem of Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. It's really what being a bird watcher, what being a naturalist, what being sort of a student of the universe around me is always is all about. That there are always new beginnings. There's always a new day. There's always a sunrise out there. And I love I always stop at this particular juncture, just past the entrance gate, to take a picture of the sunrise. And I sort of pause for a moment. It's almost sort of like quasi spiritual or something. I just like kind of close my eyes and think like what does today hold in store for me? And I never know. Like I didn't know that yesterday was going to hold in store for me three lesser black-backed gulls and those wonderful horned larks and the intense study of gulls. Every day at the Arsenal is something new, something marvelous. There's discovery, there's wonder, there's surprise. And by the way, that applies to anywhere else in the world. I suppose if I wanted to, I could call almost any other place I've been to my favorite place in the world. But this one strikes my heart in a special way. every day at the Arsenal is just so special. I hope that all of you all have special places like this as well. I hope that they're close to home, that you can get out to them, that they're meaningful to you, that there's community out there, that there are people to share with you and for you to share with at all. So on that note, I am going to stop talking and also stop the share if I can figure this out. I am waving my cursor. I may have to go back here. I have this. Oops. Maybe, I'll tell you what. How about the escape button? Very good. Okay, I am now out of, or I will be in a moment, out of the share. And here I am. Pat is still with us. And again, I want to thank you all for your attention. I appreciate your coming out here this evening. And I will turn things over to Pat for whatever comes next. I'm happy to stick around for Q&A if that's how we're going to do it, or to say goodnight if that's how we're going to do it. But Pat and Susan and Linda, thanks so much for having me, and let me know what to do now.
Thanks very much, Ted. We'll be taking questions, and those of you watching and listening along, go to that Q&A icon on the bar at the bottom of your screen and write in a Q, and Ted will give you an A.
And Pat, do you read the cues to me, or am I going to be doing
Yes,
this?
I'm
Oh,
I'm
oh,
going
gotcha.
to I'm going to read them out, and
Okay,
then you can chat. And we've even had a couple come in already. I'm just going to go take a peek at them now, just for openers.
okay.
Let's just start with the very first one. Absolutely loved your presentation. What do you think the future holds for the Arsenal?
I have a question before I answer that. Is it okay for me to know who asked the question, or am I kept in the dark by the question asker?
Say that one
Oh,
more time.
can you tell me who asks the questions, or do we not know that?
It's not listed by name, I don't
Oh, I see.
believe. Let me
Okay,
just go back and look at that. I'm sorry, that one is an anonymous attendee.
an anonymous attendee. Okay, and the question is, what comes?
Absolutely loved your presentation. What do you think the future holds for the Arsenal?
Well, I can answer that question at two levels. I think one is sort of local and one is more maybe global. Locally, I think that the arsenal itself is secure. It's sort of a paradox, but because it hasn't been adequately cleaned up for for human standards, it's not in danger of development. So uh, that's maybe a plus and a minus, but it's not safe enough to be developed. So that area is going to remain undeveloped, as far as I am aware, for the indefinite future. However, there is the question of, well, let's just say the current political climate in the United States and national attitudes, at least by the administration, toward federal holdings like this one. And I guess what I would say on that front to all of you all there who enjoy the refuge or whatever refuge you have close to home, whether it's Tinicum in Philadelphia or uh, Bosque del Apache if you live near Albuquerque or something like that. Get involved. Be helpful. Say encouraging things to the staff there. They are beleaguered. They are being pressured, I think, unfairly. So they're doing a lot of good work. I mentioned that encounter that we had with law enforcement. I know that there's a lot of angst in the U.S. right now about federal law enforcement, but the folks involved in that law enforcement operation were just supremely courteous and professional to us there. Same goes for the folks who man the refuge station, the actual visitor center. So it's a difficult time for federal employees, and especially for federal employees in the matter of the business of wildlife conservation. So the land is safe, but wise management of it perhaps is not. And I think it behooves all of us to be supportive of our refuges.
Great. Next question from Paul Malinowski. Which of the lakes do you recommend spending time on?
Yeah, so it depends on conditions. It really does. Yesterday, I can tell you that well, Havana was useless because it was frozen solid. It was a pleasant walk out there, but when Havana has water and it's low, it can often be the very best pond. I don't know. I So there are three major water bodies out there. They are Havana, Ladora, and Lower Derby, and I go to all three of them just because you never know. One could be feast and the other famine. Happily, sometimes all three are feast. I've never seen all three of them famine, so I can't answer that question except to say it depends on local conditions, and it's really worth checking in on all three of them.
Next up, from Renu Carroll. Best time of day to visit? Would it be early morning usually?
No, I don't think so. I think the whole day is great. I usually go there first thing in the morning just because I'm so excited. I can't sleep. I get up early and I go there first thing in the morning. But afternoons are wonderful. Megan Miller tells me how much she enjoys being there late in the afternoon, and that's a great time of day to see raptors. Short-eared owls, if they're out there, are going to be most likely seen in the afternoon. So I don't know that there really is a best time of the day. I will be honest with you. Often my days there go on for 9 or 10 hours, so I'm out there for the entire, well, almost the entire day sometimes. But the refuge, I should note, does open at local sunrise. You can't get in before then, and it closes at sunset. So I guess I'm inclined to the morning, just force of habit, but I don't think there's any particular rule about what the best time of the day is.
Next question from Zach Hepler. Have you seen a rough-legged hawk at the Arsenal? And
Hey,
he
Zach.
says, let me live vicariously through you.
Yes. Okay. So I wonder if Zach's working on a big year or something like that. But hi, Zach. Good to see you. Yeah. So I have. We didn't see any yesterday, but usually there is one, like one or maybe two out there on a cold winter's day. So they're out there. I have not seen one uh, today or yesterday. I don't really recall having seen eBird reports anytime recently. But if you're looking for rough-legged hawk, the Arsenal's a good place to go. If you really, really want to see one, I would recommend going about 50 miles east of there. Once you're really east of Denver and sort of like heading east along 76 or 70, they start to pick up. So I did not see one yesterday, but that doesn't mean there wasn't one there.
Next question from Kirsten Chapman. When do long-billed curlews migrate to and from Colorado? She just saw one on the beach in Encinitas, California.
Right. So they're wintering in California now and also in the Gulf Coast and elsewhere. So they're pretty early migrants. We get them back in Colorado by you know, early April. And they continue to move through into early May. Some of them breed here, by the way, like the Comanche grassland has them, and they're sparingly found elsewhere in eastern Colorado and very sparingly west of the Divide. And then they move out pretty early as well, so they can be on the move by August, even July. So pretty early migratory schedule, both in the spring and in the fall.
Next, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Donna Sichko. Thank you, Ted. Awesome talk. Have not yet been. Do you bird by car and how to find the best route at the
Yeah,
Arsenal?
thanks for saying that. I sort of glossed right over that. So it's a hybrid approach. The main wildlife drive can only be birded by car. It's illegal and dangerous to do otherwise. There are bison out there, which I didn't mention. I barely mentioned. So the refuge drive or the auto drive, the loop has to be done in a car. But if cars aren't your thing, or if you just want to do something else, there are some wonderful walking trails out there. When I've got time, I love to do a big oval that takes me from the essentially the entrance up to Havana Ponds and then over to Gun Club Pond, then back to a Lower Derby, and then come back to some cattail marshes and Ladora. That takes several hours. It's a great walk. I would say that my favorite walk of all is definitely Big Blue Stem, as I said in early summer. Also, there's an area just north of there. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but it's a wooded area that's closed right now, but is open in the spring and summer. And oh gosh, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's basically right before the car only part begins, and just such a great place to find the full suite of summer woodland birds in Colorado. So you can do both, but if you once you get onto the auto loop, you have to stay in your car.
You might be talking about the Upper Derby trailhead,
That's
possibly.
exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you, Pat. The Upper Derby Trailhead is what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's another really special place.
Good. Owen Robertson asks, any species you hope to see at the Arsenal that you haven't yet?
Hi, Owen. Good to have you here. Owen's checking in from New Haven. Great to have you. You know, Owen knows me well enough. I almost think it's a setup or something. I don't really think in those terms. I just go out, hoping to be surprised. I don't know. I trying to. So okay. Oh, and I have this fantasy that somehow you and I and maybe a few others will get permission to go in there at night, and we'll have to arrange just through the Fish and Wildlife Service, of course. But Eastern Screech Owl Barn now. Owen and I and a few others in the audience here just love night birding, and so I won't answer the question with a species, but I think the experience of being out there at night would be just magical.
And Ann Gurley has a question that everyone has and everyone has an answer to.
Mhm.
Burrowing owls have eluded me for years. Where and when would I have the best chance to see one there?
Yeah. Okay. So you need to go there in the summer. Well, in the warmer months. So they get back, let's say, effectively the end of April, and they're there maybe into early September. Um, So that changes from year to year, but there do seem to be two fairly reliable spots. So the first is the last bend heading back south off the auto loop. And I guess that's technically where Old Havana Street begins. So it's at that last bend where for several years now there have been entirely reliable colonies, so small colonies of burrowing owls. So basically look for the prairie dogs. Even cooler though than that is Rattlesnake Hill because you get out of your car there. So at the base of Rattlesnake Hill, at the chain link fence there, sort of looking off to the northeast, there have been multiple burrowing owl families in there as well. You don't get nearly as close to them as you do in your car at that sort of Havana bend, but you get to get out of your car, and if you have a scope or something like that, you can set it up and see them really nicely. So at least as of the past 2 years, those were the two great spots for burrowing owls: the last bend on the Wildlife Drive at Havana, and then getting out of your car at the base of Rattlesnake Hill.
Polly Reitz wants to know, have you ever seen a wild turkey out there?
Yes, I have. In fact, I've seen them recently. I did not see wild turkey until gosh, just about a year ago. Hannah and I were out there. And it honestly been a pretty slow day. Slow days do occasionally happen out there, but right at the end, a little group of wild turkeys just ambled past. They were at the that Discovery Trail area, sort of as you're coming down south at the end of the auto drive at just past Mary's there. So there seems to be a little flock of wild turkeys. Uh, you probably almost see them from the visitor center if you sort of look off toward the Discovery Trail. So I think now is the time to see wild turkeys. They eluded me for my first several years out there, but they're fairly reliable now.
Another anonymous attendee, actually, you can probably answer this in short order, was asking where on the wildlife drive is the blue stem field that was highlighted. What
Right. So
really
it's actually
getting at is a place called Blue Stem.
right. So it's off the Wildlife Life Drive. If you go, but I'm assuming that the person knows the refuge, but basically, if you don't make that first sharp left turn, you have to continue along the Wildlife Drive. If you just go straight, that's where it is. It's at the very, very terminus there. So from the entrance, it's due east, literally as far as you can drive, and then so you get off the auto drive, although off the auto loop, although you are continuing straight. So it's straight east of Ladora, Ladora, Havana, and Lower Derby.
And straight east becomes dirt and gravel at that point as
It,
well.
it does
You're
become
off
dirt
the
and
pavement.
gravel. It's a fine dirt and gravel road. But I'll make the point that you don't want to race at breakneck speed out to the terminus there, despite the temptation to do so. The chain link fence on the left, so that's on the north as you drive in, that is a magnet for birds. That beautiful Merlin that I showed you all earlier was on that chain link fence, and you'll sometimes just see brewer sparrows and sage thrashers and like Cassin's kingbirds and Bullock's orioles and mockingbirds and like everything just lined up on that fence. It's eye candy for the quarter mile along that stretch there.
Another question, have you ever spoken to the refuge managers about finding or trying to find a way to allow people out of cars on the wildlife loop?
No, and I wouldn't recommend it either, given the bison. There actually may be some concerns about um, human health as well. I know that some of the chemical cleanup may not be as completed there as it is elsewhere. However, I will say this: in my fantasy, in my utopia, there would be, and I'm thinking of like a Monte Vista National Wildlife Refuge down in south in the San Luis Valley, like a pull off where like all you could do is get off and there'd be a big fence so like you couldn't walk down the road or wander out into the bison or something like that, and maybe like an observation tower. That would be great, but I don't think it would be a good idea to have people wandering out there with the bison, and as I said, there may even be some human health issues that prevent that from happening at all.
Yeah, I think it's not the wandering part of the question as much as the being able to at all get out of a car, like perhaps as you suggest, a pullout
Yeah,
or a fenced place where you
yeah.
have some views.
Let me also say though, no, I love walking. I mean, I am an inveterate walker. Walking is my thing, but It's a paradox. You see more birds from your car than you do walking. They just don't mind when you drive up to them. And if you have five or six people in your car, it can get pretty tight. And I actually think back to that time that Andrea and Simon and Hannah and I were all in the same car trying to get through the same little sunroof. But by golly, you see a lot of birds out there. Since the traffic's all going in the same direction, you don't have to worry about, oncoming traffic, wondering why you stopped suddenly. So it's perfectly fine to stop, to pull off the road a little bit. And your car is a great blind. And I get it. It's not quite as pure, exhilarating as walking, but you will see an awful lot from your car with the window open.
Archer Silverman wants to know, what are your top non-bird wildlife experiences at the Arsenal?
Yeah. Probably some of them have been with Archer, actually. Archer's one of my most sort of regular companions out at the Arsenal. I love the Badgers. I don't get to see those very often, but there's just something so enchanting and charming and bewitching about the American Badgers. Some of the arthropods we've seen out there in Archer. I know you've been there for some of them, but some of those grasshoppers, the great crested grasshopper, the plains lubber, the rainbow grasshopper, just so beautiful. Also, some great snakes. I mentioned that eastern yellow-bellied racer. I know Joden Fine and Hannah and I saw a hognose snake out there. There are a lot of snakes out there. I will say though, Archer, and I bet you agree with me on this, or I suspect you at least are largely in the same ballpark as I am. This the tiger beetles. Do I remember that time we saw that with the big sand tiger beetle? I mean, we saw a lot of rare birds that day, and that tiger beetle was like that was the best find of the entire day. So I'll go for tiger beetles, badgers, and a lot of other things.
Jack Robinson wants to know if you've ever thought about a small pamphlet, Birding the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, with routes and photos.
Yeah. Um, I'm not volunteering to write it, but no, I think that'd be a neat sort of a neat storybook. Pat, you could to some extent just maybe compile all of my co-birds posts through the through the past 6 or 7 years and have that in words and pictures there, right there. But no, I think a storybook on the wildlife, and not just the birds, by the way, but the wildlife of the Arsenal would probably be a commercial success.
Maybe something to take up with the Friends group of the Front Range Wildlife Refuges.
Yeah, and a neat thing about life in the present age is that there are so many good media out there. I mean, Isaac was with me yesterday, and I saw some of his photos. I mean, he's just a better photographer than I am. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. And I mean, you could write a book just based on Isaac's photos, and but there are, 1,000 other people just like that documenting the wildlife out there.
Patricia Olson asked, do horned larks share habitat with prairie dogs?
Yes, for sure. Although it's sort of incidental, there's not a very direct symbiosis the way there is, for example, with the burrowing owls. So the habitat in which the burrowing owls are found is it's open, almost barren. That's just that's heaven on earth for a horned lark. So they're sort of incidentally in the same habitat. There are an awful lot of horned larks at the Arsenal. If you're looking for a horned lark, you will not be dissatisfied by going to the Arsenal. There are plenty of them out there. And I'm being a little facetious here, but basically the more barren and sere and sort of Martian the landscape, the more likely you are to see a horned lark out there.
An anonymous attendee has a similar question to the burrowing owl question. Where can you see badgers at the Arsenal?
Good luck with that. Yeah. So they get around is the best I can say. There clearly has been a den at Big Blue Stem, but it's abandoned. And I actually would be probably disinclined to tell you exactly where it is because I don't want the badgers to be disturbed. But I have seen them just walking when I've been walking around Big Blue Stem. So if you want just to get up close and personal to a badger, I'd say go to Big Blue Stem. If you're contented to see one from your car, your best bet by far is the Wildlife Drive.
And just something, it's more of a comment than a question, but it was someone anonymous saying that who has a nephew, a former Army explosive ordnance guy, had an assignment to the Arsenal about 15 years ago. And the comment is, draw your own conclusions as he made me do.
Yeah. Over the about 7+ years now that I've been going to the Arsenal, I've you know um had some engagement with folks who were involved in the arsenal during that very long cleanup period. And those stories are just wild. I suspect some of them were sort of classified. Perhaps they shouldn't have been shared with me, but it was quite an effort. I just the story I'll never forget, and I just remember who shared that with me, but was the guy who was like up on a tower, and the guy down below him blew up an unexploded ordnance, and the tower blew up while he was on it. He was okay. He just sort of floated down to earth. But yeah, it sounds like it was really quite something during the several decades that they cleaned up the arsenal.
One more personal one. Al Garente
Oh, hey, Al.
wants to
Wow,
know
Philadelphia. Woo.
wants to know when you're heading back to Tinicum. He wants to go birding there with you.
I would love to do that again. Well, I have a kid out in Princeton now, so that's not too far away at all. In fact, she was now that's kind of funny. She was stuck in Philadelphia. We weren't sure you're going to make it back to Princeton with that blizzard you guys just had there. But last I heard, she actually is back on campus. So I don't know, Al. I have to say, Philadelphia is still very, very near and dear to me. I had a wonderful time during the short time that I spent in the city. So I lived there. Al knows that. The rest of you all don't. But I don't know, Al. When it happens, and I'll look you up and we'll go birding. And by the way, Al, I have to say, we love Brian. That's Al's son. He's out here in Colorado doing great work for public education with regard to meteorology.
All right, one last, just under the wire, DFO member and fine photographer Dave Prentice
Oh
asks
yeah.
if you know what the status of black-footed ferrets being introduced at the arsenal is lately.
No. I gather they are not. But somebody in the audience might know this better than I. There's been some new like concern, and I can't remember what it is. I mean, they're being preyed on by coyotes or something like that. So my understanding is that the ferrets are not as secure as we thought that they were 4 or 5 years ago. There have never been a lot of ferrets out there. Hey, by the way, I think it was Owen, did Owen ask what I'd like to see most of all? I mean, it's sort of a cliche, but I'll put the ferret out there. I've still not seen a black-footed ferret on the arsenal. I know that they're out there. It's just sort of a matter of luck and getting out there either early in the morning or being there late in the afternoon. But my understanding is that the ferrets are not doing well. They are, however, of course, very carefully monitored, and the folks who actually know what they're doing, I think, are very aware of the present concerns for the ferret.